Welcome back to Love Sleeping Stories. I'm so glad you're here tonight. Before we begin, take a deep breath. Let your shoulders drop, adjust your blankets, and leave the noise of the day behind. Tonight, we're going on a journey together. Let the world fade away, and let's get started. Part 1. The Loom of Time and the Roman Dawn. Close your eyes for a moment. Let the weight of the day settle into the mattress beneath you, and imagine a soft, silver mist rising from the floor of a vast, infinite library. This is the library of human memory, where every heartbeat ever felt is recorded in ink made of starlight. Tonight, we reach for a volume bound in deep crimson velvet, its edges worn smooth by the touch of billions of hands throughout the centuries. The title embossed on the spine glows faintly. The Eternal History of Valentine's Day. As we open the heavy cover, a scent of ancient parchment and dried rose petals fills the air. The pages don't just contain words, they are portals. We begin our journey not in a world of plastic hearts and bright red ribbons, but in a world of marble, fire, and the raw, untamed forces of nature. We are traveling back, far back, to the sun-drenched hills of ancient Rome, long before the world knew the name of the saint we celebrate today. In those ancient times, the middle of February was not a time of gentle romance, but a period of profound spiritual cleansing. The Romans called it Februa, a month dedicated to purification, to shaking off the dust of winter and preparing the soul for the return of the sun. But the heart of this period was a festival so old that even the Romans of the Empire spoke of it with a sense of mystery, the Lupercalia. Imagine standing on the Palatine Hill under a crisp, star-studded February sky. Below us, the city of Rome is a sprawling labyrinth of torchlit alleys and grand temples. The Lupercalia, held on February 15th, was a celebration of Lupercus, the god of shepherds, and a tribute to the legendary she-wolf who nursed the founders of Rome, Romulus, and Remus. It was a wild, earthy affair. Young men known as the Luperci would gather at the sacred cave of Lupercal. There, amidst the smoke of ritual fires, they would dress in the skins of sacrificed goats and run through the streets of the city. In their hands, they carried thongs of goat leather, called februa. As they ran, they would gently strike the women who lined the paths. Far from being a gesture of cruelty, this was a sought-after blessing. It was believed that the touch of the leather thong brought fertility, eased the pains of childbirth, and ensured that the coming year would be filled with the abundance of life. It was the first, primitive connection between the month of February and the mystery of human union. But there was another custom during the Lupercalia, one that whispers to us across the millennia as a precursor to our modern traditions. It is said that the names of young women were written on slips of papyrus and placed into deep clay urns. Young men would then draw a name from the jar, and the pair would be matched for the duration of the festival. Sometimes, these chance encounters, orchestrated by the luck of the draw, blossomed into lifelong marriages. Even then, in the shadow of the Colosseum, the human heart was looking for a sign, a spark of fate to lead it to another. As the centuries rolled on, the wild energy of the Lupercalia began to soften. The Roman Empire was changing. A new faith, Christianity, was spreading through the catacombs and the marketplaces. The old gods were fading into the mist, and the people needed a new story, a story not of wild rituals, but of a love so great it was willing to sacrifice everything. This is where we encounter the man whose name would become synonymous with the heartbeat of the world, Valentinus. Step now into the 3rd century, a time of shadows and steel. Rome is ruled by Emperor Claudius II, a man often called Claudius the Cruel. The empire is stretched thin, plagued by invasions and internal strife. Claudius believes that his soldiers are failing him because they are too attached to their families. A man with a wife and children, the emperor mused, is a man who fears death, a man who looks over his shoulder during battle, longing for the warmth of his hearth. And so, in an act of cold military logic, Claudius issued a decree. Marriage was abolished for all young men of military age. The legion was to be their only love, the sword their only companion. But in the heart of the city lived a humble priest named Valentine. He was a man of immense quietude, a healer who understood that the laws of heaven and the laws of the heart were far older and far more powerful than the edicts of any earthly emperor. Valentine watched the young lovers of Rome, couples who had promised themselves to one another, only to have their futures stolen by a stroke of a pen. He could not stand by and watch love be outlawed. In the dead of night, in secret gardens where the scent of jasmine mingled with the damp stone of the city, Valentine began to perform clandestine weddings. Imagine the scene: a flickering candle, a wooden cross, and two young people holding hands with white-knuckled intensity, whispering their vows while the heavy boots of the Roman guard echoed on the cobblestones nearby. Valentine was their guardian, the weaver of a secret tapestry of commitment that the emperor could not touch. For a time, he was a ghost, a shadow of hope for the city's youth, but secrets in Rome were as fragile as glass. Eventually, the news of the priest of love reached the ears of Claudius. Valentine was arrested and dragged before the emperor. Even then, it is said that Valentine's presence was so calming, his speech so eloquent, that Claudius was momentarily moved. He tried to convince Valentine to renounce his faith and return to the Roman gods, but Valentine, with the steadfastness of a mountain, refused. He spoke instead of a love that transcends the grave, a love that is the very breath of the Creator. Valentine was cast into a deep, cold dungeon to await his execution. It was here, in the silence of the stone, that the most beautiful part of his legend took root. His jailer, a man named Asterius, had heard of Valentine's reputation as a healer. Asterius had a daughter, a young girl who had been blind since birth. In a gesture of desperation and hidden respect, he brought his daughter to Valentine's cell. Day after day, the priest and the girl talked. He didn't just pray for her. He told her stories. He described the world she couldn't see, the vibrant gold of a wheat field, the deep, bruised purple of a thunderstorm, the way the light dances on the Tiber at sunset. He gave her the world through his words. And then, the legend says, a miracle occurred. Through his faith and his touch, the scales fell from her eyes. For the first time, she saw the world, and the first face she saw was the kind, weathered face of the man who had risked everything for love. On the morning of his execution, February 14th, 269 AD, Valentine sent one last message to the girl. He didn't have much, just a scrap of parchment and a heart full of grace. He signed the letter with a phrase that would echo through the next 1700 years, becoming the most famous closing in the history of the written word. From your Valentine. As he was led out to the Via Flaminia, the air was cold, the sky a pale, wintry blue. He left behind a world that was still harsh, but he had planted a seed. He had shown that love is not a weakness to be banned by emperors, but a strength that can illuminate the darkest cell. Part 2. The Song of the Birds and the Knight's Vow. The centuries following Valentine's sacrifice were like a long, quiet winter for Europe. The Roman Empire crumbled. its marble temples reclaimed by ivy and time, but the memory of the priest who died for love did not vanish. It lingered in the whispers of the faithful, a small ember kept alive through the dark ages. As we turn the next heavy page of our velvet-bound book, the air grows cooler and smells of damp earth and wood smoke. We have arrived in the Middle Ages, an era where the legend of Saint Valentine would finally blossom into the romantic celebration we recognize today. For a long time, February 14th remained a somber day on the church calendar, a day to honor a martyr. But the human spirit, much like the dormant seeds beneath the frost, was waiting for a reason to celebrate life. In the year 496, as we discussed, Pope Gelasius I had officially named Valentine the patron of this day, hoping to turn the lingering shadows of the pagan Lupercalia into a Christian feast. Yet, it wasn't the church's decrees that truly transformed the holiday. It was the birds in the trees and the songs of traveling poets. Imagine yourself now in the 14th century, perhaps in the lush countryside of England or the rolling vineyards of France. The winter has been long and harsh, but as mid-February approaches, a subtle change shivers through the landscape. The sun stays a fraction longer in the sky, and the morning air, though still biting, carries a new melody. In medieval folklore, there was a widespread and beautiful belief. It was said that on February 14th, the birds of the air would choose their mates for the year. Imagine the medieval peasant or the noble lady looking out of a stone window and seeing two sparrows fluttering together in a leafless oak tree. To them, this was nature's own wedding. It was a sign that even in the coldest month, the pulse of attraction and the necessity of companionship were stirring. This natural romance found its greatest champion in a man named Geoffrey Chaucer. He was a poet of immense wit and heart, often called the father of English literature. In his dream vision poem, The Parliament of Fowls, written to honor a royal engagement, he immortalized this connection between the saint and the birds. He wrote, "For this was on Saint Valentine's Day, when every bird cometh there to choose his mate." With those lines, the bridge was built. No longer was Valentine just a martyr in a dusty tomb. He became the patron of the mating season. Suddenly, the royal courts of Europe were abuzz with a new kind of game, the game of courtly love. Close your eyes and picture a medieval great hall. Huge logs crackle in the hearth, casting flickering shadows against tapestries that tell stories of unicorns and brave knights. This was the age of chivalry, where love was treated as a sacred quest, a high art form. A knight did not simply like a lady, he worshipped her. He would wear her colors, perhaps a ribbon of sky blue or a sleeve of crimson silk tied to his lance during a tournament. He would write her poems, or hire a wandering troubadour to sing them under her balcony by the light of a crescent moon. During this time, the Valentine became a person, not just a day. In the courts of France and England, noblemen and ladies would hold elaborate lotteries. A young man would draw a lady's name from a silken hat, and for the rest of the year, he would be her Valentine. He was sworn to protect her, to serve her, and to treat her with the utmost devotion. It was a sophisticated dance of etiquette and emotion, a way to bring beauty and gentleness to a world that was often violent and uncertain. But let us look closer at the shadows of history to find a more personal touch. It is the year 1415. The setting is the Tower of London, a grim, gray fortress of stone and sorrow. Inside one of its cold cells sits Charles, the Duke of Orleans. He had been captured at the Battle of Agincourt and would remain a prisoner for 25 long years. Can you imagine the loneliness of a man who was once a prince of the blood, now reduced to watching the fog roll off the Thames? To pass the time and soothe his aching heart, Charles turned to poetry. He wrote to his wife, Bonne, who was far away in France. In one of his manuscripts, he calls her his sweet Valentine. He speaks of the malady of love that makes him pine for her presence. This letter, written in a cramped hand on expensive parchment, is the oldest surviving physical Valentine in existence. It is a testament to the fact that even behind stone walls and iron bars, the spirit of the holiday, the need to say "I love you" across the distance, could not be broken. As the Middle Ages began to fade into the Renaissance, the traditions became even more elaborate. In the 15th century, King Charles VI of France established a high court of love in Paris. It was a marvelous, theatrical institution. On Valentine's Day, the court would meet to hear trials concerning lovers' quarrels. Poets and judges would debate whether a knight had been sufficiently faithful or if a lady's heart had been too cold. There were banquets where the wine flowed like rubies and every dish was decorated with symbols of affection. Even the common folk had their rituals. In the villages of the British Isles, young people would rise early on Valentine's morning. The first person of the opposite sex you saw, who wasn't a family member, was destined to be your Valentine. There was a nervous excitement in the air as girls peeked through their curtains, hoping to see a particular handsome blacksmith or a kind-eyed farmer pass by. We also see the beginning of the language of things. If a man gave a woman a pair of gloves on Valentine's Day, it was a serious proposal of marriage. If she wore them to church the next Sunday, it was her way of saying yes to the world. There were also love spoons carved from wood in Wales with intricate knots and hearts, each symbol representing a different promise, a wheel for a vow to work for her, a key for the key to his heart. These were the centuries where the foundation was laid. The holiday was no longer a Roman rite of blood and fire, nor was it merely a somber church feast. It had become a celebration of the human connection, a time to recognize that, despite the winter's chill, the heart remains warm. The story was about to change again, however. The handwritten poem and the carved wooden spoon were beautiful, but they were rare. The world was moving toward a time of printing presses, of grander commerce, and of a revolution in how we express our deepest feelings. The intimate whisper of the medieval poet was about to become a chorus that would be heard across the entire world. Part 3. Lace, Ink, and the Victorian Fever. As we turn the pages of our velvet book once more, the scent of wood smoke transitions into the delicate aroma of rosewater and the crisp smell of freshly printed paper. We have entered the 19th century, the Victorian era. If the Middle Ages gave Valentine's Day its soul, the Victorians gave it its flair. This was a time of immense social restraint, where people rarely spoke their true feelings aloud. In a world of stiff collars, heavy corsets, and strict etiquette, a Valentine's card became a vital safety valve for the heart. It was the one day of the year when you could say the unsaid, hidden behind the anonymity of a beautiful piece of art. Imagine the streets of London or New York in the mid-1800s. The Industrial Revolution was in full swing. Suddenly, paper was no longer a luxury for the rich, it was being mass-produced. Printing techniques like lithography allowed for the creation of intricate designs that looked like lace, but were made entirely of paper. This was the birth of the golden age of the Valentine. The Victorian Valentine was an object of breathtaking complexity. Imagine a card that isn't just a flat piece of paper, but a layered shadow box. You pull a small silken tab, and a hidden scene unfolds: a pair of turtle doves rising above a bed of velvet moss, or a tiny mirror hidden behind a paper flap so that when the recipient opened it, they saw their own reflection as the object of affection. These cards were decorated with real lace, dried flowers, feathers, and even tiny gemstones. However, the journey of these cards was often perilous. Before the uniform penny post was established in Britain in 1840, the person receiving a letter had to pay for the postage. Imagine the heartbreak of a young woman receiving a beautiful, heavy valentine from a secret admirer, only to realize she didn't have the pennies to pay the postman to hand it over. The postal reform changed everything. For just 1 penny, anyone could send a message of love anywhere in the country. On February 14th, 1841, the London post office was so overwhelmed that they had to hire hundreds of extra sorters. The city was drowning in a sea of paper hearts. But let us cross the Atlantic Ocean to see how this tradition conquered the New World. In the United States, in the 1840s, a young woman named Esther Howland, often called the mother of the American Valentine, changed the industry forever. Esther was a student at Mount Holyoke Female Seminary. Her father ran a large stationery store, and one day she received an English valentine that fascinated her. She didn't just want to admire it, she wanted to make it better. Imagine Esther in her home in Worcester, Massachusetts, surrounded by scraps of imported lace, colorful illustrations, and pots of glue. She began creating her own elaborate designs. Her brother, a traveling salesman, took her samples on the road, hoping for a few $100s in orders. To their utter shock, he returned with over $5,000 worth of requests. Esther had to set up a literal assembly line of her friends in her attic, creating the first Valentine's factory in America. Her cards were expensive. Some cost as much as a high-end watch, but they were symbols of status and deep devotion. Yet, not all was sweet and rosy in the 19th century. There was a darker, more mischievous side to February 14th that history often forgets: the vinegar valentines. While some sought to express love, others used the anonymity of the post to send insults. Imagine receiving a card that looked beautiful on the outside, but inside contained a caricature of a nosy neighbor or a stingy boss, accompanied by a biting poem. These cards were the 19th century version of an internet troll. They were so popular that for a time they made up nearly half of all Valentine's Day sales. Postmen sometimes refused to deliver them because the messages were too cruel. As we moved toward the end of the century, the world began to shrink. The telegraph and then the telephone appeared, but they could never replace the physical card. In 1913, a small company in Kansas City called Hallmark began mass-producing valentines. This shifted the tradition from handmade, unique pieces of art to the colorful, catchy cards we know today. But it wasn't just about paper. The Victorian era also solidified the symbols we still use. Cupid, the mischievous Roman god of desire, was transformed from a powerful, often dangerous deity into the chubby, harmless cherub we see on chocolate boxes. The language of flowers became a secret code for lovers. A red rose meant deep love, but a yellow one might mean jealousy, and a sprig of lavender could signal mistrust. Every detail of a Valentine's gift was a sentence in a silent conversation. And then there was the chocolate. In 1861, Richard Cadbury, the famous British chocolatier, had a brilliant idea. He had recently improved the process for making drinking chocolate and had a surplus of cocoa butter. He used it to create eating chocolates and put them in beautiful, heart-shaped boxes he designed himself. He marketed them with a dual purpose. Once the chocolates were eaten, the beautiful box could be used to store love letters. Thus, the tradition of the Valentine's chocolate box was born, a blend of sweetness and sentiment that still dominates the holiday today. As the 20th century dawned, the world faced great wars and great changes. But even in the trenches of World War I, soldiers would use their ration paper to scrawl a few lines to a sweetheart back home. The holiday had survived empires, religious shifts, and industrial revolutions. It was no longer just a European or American custom. It was becoming a global phenomenon. Part 4. A World of Hearts and the Soft Echo of Eternity. As we turn the final pages of our great velvet book, the rustle of Victorian lace fades, replaced by the soft hum of the modern world and the glowing lights of 1,000 cities. We have arrived in the 20th and 21st centuries. In this era, Valentine's Day broke free from its Western roots and traveled across oceans and mountains, proving that the language of the heart needs no translator. It became a global tapestry, woven with different customs but always holding the same golden thread of affection. Imagine for a moment that we are soaring over the world on this mid-February night, looking down at how different cultures have taken the seed planted by Saint Valentine and grown their own unique gardens. In Japan, the tradition took a fascinating turn in the 1950s. It wasn't the man who started the trend, but a misunderstood advertisement that led to a unique custom. On February 14th, it is the women who give chocolates to the men. But there is a beautiful hierarchy to it. There is girichoko, or obligation chocolate, given to colleagues and friends to show appreciation and respect. Then, there is the omme choco, the true feeling chocolate, often handmade with great care, given only to a romantic partner. But the story doesn't end there. Exactly 1 month later, on March 14th, Japan celebrates White Day, where men are expected to return the favor with gifts that are often 2 or 3 times the value of what they received. It is a rhythmic, balanced exchange of kindness. In South Korea, they take this even further. Not only do they have Valentine's Day and White Day, but they also have Black Day on April 14th. This is a day for those who didn't receive any gifts to gather at restaurants, wear black, and eat jjajangmyeon black bean noodles. It's a day of solidarity, humor, and shared friendship, reminding us that love isn't just about romance, it's about the community that holds us together. If we fly over to Wales, we find a tradition that dates back centuries but feels incredibly modern in its craftsmanship. Here they celebrate Saint Dwynwen, the Welsh patron saint of lovers, in late January. But the spirit carries into February. Young men would spend long winter nights carving love spoons from a single piece of wood. Each symbol on the spoon had a meaning: a bell for a wedding, a wheel for support, or a lock for security. These spoons weren't just gifts. They were promises carved in oak and sycamore, meant to last a lifetime. In the Philippines, Valentine's Day has become the most popular time for mass weddings. Imagine hundreds of couples gathering in public squares or stadiums, all saying "I do" at the same moment, under a sky filled with balloons and music. It is a grand, communal celebration of the leap of faith that is marriage. As we move into the 21st century, the way we send our Valentines has changed again. We have moved from the heavy clay urns of Rome and the lace of the Victorians to pixels and light. Today, a Valentine might be a voice message across thousands of miles, a curated playlist of songs that remind us of someone, or a simple text that arrives just when we need it most. The medium has shifted from papyrus to parchment, from paper to glass screens, but the intention remains identical to that of the priest in the Roman dungeon, to say, "I see you, I value you, and you are not alone." In recent years, the holiday has expanded even further. We now celebrate Galentine's Day, a tribute to the deep, platonic love between friends, and we use the day to practice self-love, recognizing that the most important relationship we have is the one with ourselves. The 14th of February has become a universal pause a day to soften the edges of a busy world and remember that kindness is the ultimate currency. Now, as our journey through time comes to a close, let us return to that quiet library where we began. The silver mist is still there, swirling gently around the shelves. We take the crimson book of Valentine's history and slowly, carefully, slide it back into its place. The story isn't over, of course. A new page is being written every time someone holds a hand or sends a kind thought into the world. Feel the stillness of the room around you. The history of Valentine's Day is a long, winding river that has flowed through centuries of war and peace, through times of scarcity and times of plenty. It has survived because the need for connection is as fundamental as the need for breath. Think of the billions of valentines sent throughout history, the whispered vows in Roman gardens, the poems written in the Tower of London, the lace cards carried by steamships, and the digital messages flying through the air tonight. All of them are part of a great, silent symphony of human warmth. Let your breathing slow down, matching the steady, ancient rhythm of this story. The world is dark and quiet now. The birds in the trees are tucked away, waiting for the spring that Valentine promised so long ago. The stars above are the same ones that look down on the Lupercalia and on the window of Esther Howland. They watch over you now, constant and calm. There is nothing more you need to do. The history is told, the secrets are shared, and the love of the ages is a blanket that keeps the world warm. You are part of this story, too, a quiet point of light in the vast history of the human heart. Sleep now. Let the images of Koronkoe Kartki, ancient Roman streets, and singing birds drift through your mind like soft clouds. The journey is complete. The morning will come in its own time, bringing with it a new day and new opportunities to be someone's Valentine. Good night, sweet dreams, and may your sleep be as peaceful as a heart that has finally found its home